So it's been about 1 month since the OnePlus 9 Pro came out, and in the first month, there was a lot of talk about this phone, a lot of excitement about the Hasselblad partnership, the big specs, the overall impressive package. But I've actually been using this phone every day for the past month, and as my daily driver, there was a lot of stuff I noticed that wasn't reflected by specs. So I want to step away from the spec sheets and talk more about what this phone is actually like to use on a day-to-day basis, because ultimately, specs might help you buy a phone, but once you buy it, it's not going to be the specs that determine how good that phone is for you. It's going to be the little nuances, the things that you notice when you use this phone every single day. So in this video, I want to talk about some pros and cons that I noticed that I didn't expect when I first got this phone, and ultimately help you decide whether or not this is a phone for you. So I want to break this video down into 3 main categories. The first being the physical aspects, the second one being the camera, which is really interesting, and we'll get there when we get there. But the third thing is actually the software, which, because the main purpose of this video is to talk about the little nuances and what I like and don't like about this phone on a day-to-day basis, by far the software is the most important thing we'll talk about. But of course, the physical aspects are also very interesting. And looking at this phone, you'll see it looks a lot like a Galaxy S20, S20 Plus, S20 Ultra, S21, like the Galaxy S lineup looks a lot like this phone. And being that I came from the S21 to this one, I really expected it to feel very similar. And in many ways it did. It's a little bit more slippery, but for the most part, the dimensions, the shape, the curves are all very similar, which is a good thing. I like the design of that phone. But there are actually some differences that I found were big improvements. One of them being, of course, the switch on the right side. OnePlus does this, and it's something I really like to see. You can switch from silent to ringer to vibrate with a physical switch on the right side, something we've been seeing on iPhones forever. And I don't know why Android phones don't adopt that more. I really like having that on here, so that's a big positive. Another big positive is actually the layout of these buttons. I've said this for a while with Samsung phones. I don't like it when all the buttons are on one side, and I think having the volume rocker on the left side and the power button on the right side just makes the most sense. It's easy to use with one hand, easy to take screenshots. To me, that's what makes the most sense. The aesthetic of this phone, as far as I'm concerned, I think it looks pretty good. It's kind of frosted on the top and more mirrored on the bottom, so you might get a few fingerprints on the bottom, but in general, I think it's a really nice looking phone. Some other things that I did notice on the front of this screen, they kind of had a mixed bag of opinions on the fingerprint sensor. So for one, it's very fast, it's very accurate, and I had no problem signing in. But other than that, there were some things that I weren't especially fond of. So for one, the fingerprint sensor is all the way on the bottom of the screen, which means that, yes, I got used to moving my thumb down there, but at the same time, it just feels like you really have to flex your thumb farther than it would naturally go, and it would just be more comfortable if that was maybe an inch higher on the screen. So maybe an improvement for next year, but again, something that is pretty easy to overlook. Some other things were, because it is an optical fingerprint sensor, it's not ultrasonic, which means that you do need some kind of a light behind the screen in order to sign in. And that means that when you're looking at this at night, so maybe 1 a.m. if you wake up, or 2 a.m., whatever, you wake up and you look at your phone, even if your phone screen is dimmed all the way down, you're gonna have a really bright light behind that fingerprint sensor, which I found to be kind of annoying and a little bit blinding, especially when it's really dark out. The third thing that I really didn't like about this is that when your screen is totally off like this, so like literally all black, nothing on the screen, and you just put your finger where the fingerprint sensor is, on a lot of the ultrasonic phones and a lot of other phones out there, it would just sign in automatically. But this one, it doesn't. Instead, it wakes the screen, and then you have to touch it again to actually sign in. So one extra step that I thought was a little bit annoying. Typically when you pick your phone up, the screen turns on anyway, so it's normally not a problem. But in some situations, I just found it a little bit frustrating. Back to some positives with this phone, the haptic feedback, so the vibrating motor on there, does a really good job. It's a really nice, clean vibrating motor. It's not the strongest out there, but it seems to be really well controlled and by no means sloppy. So that was a positive. I like how that felt, and overall the build quality of this phone just seems really solid. So physically speaking, I really don't have any complaints besides the fingerprint sensor, and I really liked using this. Of course, some other things that are maybe more internal, the battery life on this I thought was fantastic. I'm getting about 1.5 days out of this, but of course it depends on how you're using it. I've generally been maxing out the screen resolution, the refresh rate, and I have NFC on all the time, but granted, I try not to use my phone too much during the day. I'm usually editing videos and doing other stuff. Now, for some people who really push this harder and are going to burn the battery faster, the good news is the other side of OnePlus, like really one of the big reasons that they started to become popular is because they're focusing on making things fast. Charging is one of them. So you can charge with 65 watt warp charging with a wire, or 50-watt wireless charging, which is already faster than most phones can handle anyway. And so, I mean, I feel like I'm never running low on battery. Okay, and then one last thing I want to mention is I really like the curve of the display on here. I know some curved screens, they look really nice in the front, which this one does, but sometimes they have a problem where your palm has like some little rejection issues in the corner and it starts changing keyboards and stuff like that. This one, that is definitely not the case. It works perfectly fine. I've never had any kind of palm rejection issues, and I think the curve of the screen is really a perfect balance. So that brings us into the next category, which is the cameras. And so the big thing is the Hasselblad partnership. They mentioned that a million times in the release. Everyone's talking about it. And for the most part, it's supposed to bring better colors to the phone. So better colors, and honestly, I think the colors do look pretty good on this phone compared to a lot of other ones out there. I would say this is definitely a little bit more real and natural. So not very saturated like we see on Samsung phones, not very flat and warm as we see on iPhones. And so honestly, I'm definitely a fan of the colors with this. But of course, there are some other drawbacks, and we'll mention that in the sample photos. But let's start off by getting into a video test.
All right, so this is the test of the camera. I'm just walking really normally. You can see it's really incredibly stable. The audio quality, in my opinion, is also really good on here.
Yeah, so from the looks of that video, it seems like Hasselblad might have forgotten to look at the video. As you can see, the white balance was really a struggle. It shifts between warmer and cooler tones all the time, and especially when you zoom out to the ultra-wide lens.
This is shooting 4K 30, but it also goes all the way up to 4K 120. So as far as specs go, this is definitely a very impressive video. Looking up, you'll see that we have a pretty good dynamic range. The sky looks pretty natural, and we can zoom out from the standard lens to the ultra-wide lens here, and the colors look a little bit different. I think everything looks a little bit yellower, but if we zoom back in, it doesn't give you like the smoothest transition between lenses. You'll see right here, it kind of skips around right there, and you can see the color difference. But if we just go to the standard lens, one disappointing factor I found with this is that when you zoom in, I believe it's not using the telephoto lens. So as we zoom in, it caps us out at 10x zoom, and you can see it doesn't really look that great. So zooming in telephoto video is not really going to be something you'll experience with this phone. And if we quickly jump down, you'll see that things get in focus really quickly. And now this is what the front-facing camera looks and sounds like. I've never really been a big fan of having the camera in the corner of the screen because I feel like I have to, I don't know, it just looks weird when I'm looking at the camera. One downside is that this is only shooting 1080p for some reason. I don't know why they didn't upgrade that. It's 2021. You need to have 4K on all the cameras, but regardless, they don't on this one. Otherwise, the color and sharpness look pretty decent for a 1080p selfie camera. But you guys can leave a comment and let me know what you think of this and all the cameras for video and audio quality.
So needless to say, OnePlus clearly missed when it came to video capabilities, but I think their still shots made up for it. The primary rear lens, the color looks really good. The bark, the leaves, everything in this picture were very true to life. It looked really good, and you can see this one with the water. Again, great sharpness, great detail. Overall, really solid color that looked exactly as I saw it in real life. Again, you can go into even this shot here, and you're still seeing a lot of great stuff there. The ultra-wide lens still is a little bit warmer for some reason, even with the still shot, so you'll see as we zoom in, it's a lot cooler right here, but again, I think this shot looks really good. The primary rear lens was impressive. The 3.3x telephoto lens was passable but not great. Zooming into 10x, very, very grainy, but you can still tell what it is. And then, of course, 30x zoom looks almost like a fake, well, it looks like a Bob Ross painting or something. I don't know. But looking at the macro lens, which is actually the ultra wide, I was happy that they doubled that in there because it has autofocus, a good sensor, good color, and it doesn't take up an extra lens spot on the back of the phone. Looking at the front-facing camera, this was okay, a little bit dull with the color, not a whole lot going on there, and a lot of clarity bubbles all the way around me with the portrait mode. The rear camera, the skin tones look better. It still over-sharpened things in the background, as I mentioned before, like those branches, but I wasn't a big fan of the portrait mode. It kind of just uniformly blurred everything behind me and made it look like a green screen. Other than that, though, I was definitely impressed with the primary rear shooter. I thought the color and everything looked good, and it was a decent still shot camera. So to summarize the cameras, overall, they're pretty good. The things that I didn't like, the 1080p limit on the front-facing camera, the over-sharpening of the background for images, the just uniform blur on portrait mode, and then the last one is kind of that the digital zoom doesn't really do that much for me, so it wasn't quite as good as a lot of other phones at this price, but that's pretty much the limit of what I didn't like. What I did like was the natural color, the overall aesthetic of most photos, especially with the main and the ultra-wide lens. Overall, they did a good job. And of course, using that ultra-wide lens as a macro lens, kind of a little double thing right there, so you don't need that extra macro lens on the back. I don't really use it anyway, but I was happy to see that at least they're using a high quality sensor and just kind of doing a 2-for-1 there. That's something I really like to see more and more phones do. So the cameras, like, I've seen some mixed reviews. Some people say it's a big setback for this phone. Some people say it's a huge improvement. Honestly, I think it's somewhere down the middle. Like, the cameras are definitely passable. They're able to compete in some situations with the best, but overall, I wouldn't rank this my #1 phone for the best photos or videos. But honestly, I don't think that's really a big deal because the physical aspects and the software aspects really make up for that. And so that leads into the software aspects of this video. So the software on this phone, this is running Android, the latest Android, and it has their version of Android on there, which is called Oxygen OS. And so Oxygen OS from OnePlus is kind of supposed to be a lighter operating system. They still have a lot of things, a lot of features in there that I really like to see, but it's still very close to just pure Android. So it's going to have a very quick experience, honestly. And so from my testing with this, I found that there were some things I really liked. For one, when you connect a pair of earbuds or headphones or anything Bluetooth, it will automatically detect what codec it's capable of using. So if it's aptX, you can just automatically use that. Versus other phones, when you have to go into like developer options and stuff like that, you just know that you're going to get good audio quality as soon as you connect to this phone. That's a big positive. Another thing I liked is called Zen mode on here. It's a cool way to kind of disconnect from your phone. So if you find that you're using your phone too much and you need to focus for 60 minutes, 2 hours, maybe even 10 minutes, whatever you want, you can go into Zen mode. It doesn't let you get out of this. So you literally just lock your phone. It shows you a timer and it counts down until the end of your focus or Zen mode, your Zen time. And so I think that's a cool feature that I'm not going to be distracted by my phone. So, I mean, is everyone going to use that? Probably not, but it's something that I've been using almost every day. Of course, you have plenty of other features on here related to Android, so Google Assistant is very accessible. Google Pay, as long as you're signed in, you can just tap anything and pay. Like, a lot of that stuff that's with Android works very well, and I found that the experience on here is just very, very quick, very simple little seamless animations that make it feel very fast and very smooth, and like I said before, it's a really good combination of the simplicity we see with an iPhone and the features that we're seeing on Samsung phones. So Samsung phones sometimes feel a little bulky just because they have so many features in there. And then iPhones sometimes, to me at least, feel a little bare because you really can't customize that much. It's missing a lot of features that I'm seeing on Android phones. And I think this one is really the happy medium there. So for example, if you don't like the widgets cluttering up your screen, you can swipe down from the middle of the home screen and it goes into this other little category, this other little interface there that has a bunch of different little widgets. You can have a step counter there, your recent apps. I put my calendar there, remember your parking space, like all kinds of things that it's just a really convenient interface to have. So as far as software goes, the more I use this, the more I like using this. And I mean, I've used OnePlus phones in the past, but really, every time I come back to Oxygen OS, I just really like using it. So guys, that's pretty much my summary of what it's been like to use the OnePlus 9 Pro after a little while now. And so honestly, to summarize, the physical build of it is fantastic. I love having the switch on the side. The cameras are good, but not the best. It's really the only thing holding this phone back from being a clear best phone in the industry right now. But the software really makes up for that a lot. I find that it's really smooth, very fast, and easy to use. And so I chose to use this phone as my daily driver because right now, I think it's the best Android phone on the market. But you guys can leave a comment below. Let me know what you think of this phone or any other phones that you think might be able to compete with this one, and maybe I'll make a comparison. If you guys enjoyed this video, as always, consider liking and subscribing. I'm Mike O'Brien. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.